Hello everyone, in this video I'll be breaking down the 10 biggest meta changes in Baldur's Gate 3's patch 8, which added 12 new subclasses, 5 new spells, fixed some items that actually make things pretty crazy when you combine them together. So I'll be breaking down the biggest changes that we got here, and the first thing that I want to be focusing on is Shadowblade, which is a spell that was previously only available from a ring. It's now added to the Warlock, Sorcerer, Wizard spell list, as well as the Eldritch Knight and the Arcane Trickster Rogue. So at level 3, the Warlock gets this Shadowblade here, which is 2 to 16 psychic damage per attack. Now, why this is crazy is that there's an item in Act 2 called the Resonance Stone. You can grab this and it makes any creature that is nearby you vulnerable to psychic damage, which will effectively double the damage of this. Not to mention, a 2d8 is a pretty good damage die for a weapon, and on top of all of this, you can actually upcast it as well. So this becomes pretty crazy because we can go ahead here, summoning our Shadowblade. The Warlock will just automatically summon it once you get to your level 5 spell slot. So levels 3 and 4 will get an extra 1d8, and then levels 5 and 6 will get an additional 2d8. So this is a weapon that now deals 4d8 of psychic damage plus your plus 8 depending on your I'm using the strength modifier to add additional damage there. That becomes pretty crazy because if you're equipped with a strength potion, that's a maximum 40 damage on a single weapon attack. That's effectively doubled with the Resonance Stone, so a potential for a single weapon attack to do 80 damage. That's nuts. Now, this goes even further. There's a spell that's just been added to the game as well with Staggering Smite. Look at all that psychic damage. That's crazy. So 48 plus 8 psychic damage plus a 4d6 psychic damage and possibly stagger your target. If this doesn't outright kill them, they're going to be in rough shape. This obviously uses up a level 5 spell slot from the Warlock, but you can effectively do this if you're to level 11 gets 3 level 5 spell slots. You can short rest after summoning that in. That's 3 attacks that have a potential of it doing 128 damage. That's crazy. So you can see here, if you to use this attack, it's likely going to one-shot Halsin. I'm sorry, Halsin, but yeah, 44 and 36. It hits hard, and it's crazy because you can also go ahead with 2 actions from Pact of the Blade for the Warlock. One of them can be a Booming Blade, which is 48 plus 8 psychic damage, and then additional 1d8, and then it even scales up even higher. So once we hit our max level, it'll do a 2d8 of thunder damage, and whenever they move, they take 3d8 thunder damage. This can be used every single turn, so you can do 1 turn, Booming Blade, potential of 56 damage, and then that obviously psychic damage is doubled, so it becomes crazy, and then you can do a Staggering Smite on your second action. For 2 attacks, that's probably going to 2-shot most enemies. This becomes a serious meta in the game, especially with the Hexblade, who can apply the Hexblade's curse, and you can also bind your Hexed weapon. I will be getting into all of that in just a moment. The Shadowblade's a focus here because not only is it great on the Hexblade Warlock, it's also good on the Blade Singing Wizard, which is a new class that was added in patch 8, because it can also use Shadowblade. It gets crazy because the Blade Singing Wizard gets 2 attacks. So any character that uses this will automatically receive the short sword proficiencies, so they can use this weapon. But yeah, it's very powerful, and it looks cool too, but the biggest thing is the psychic damage is extremely powerful when coupled with the Resonance Stone. So if you're looking to maximize damage, this is probably the strongest single damage weapon attack. Your damage is going to be upwards of 80 damage with a main hand attack. Absolutely crazy. And that's not to mention adding in Staggering Smite or Booming Blade on top of that. So it hits hard. And the Hexblade Warlock also gets Wrathful Smite, which will add a little extra psychic damage for early game. So yeah, you can absolutely ravage the game with this. It's pretty crazy what is possible of doing. So yeah, I think that Shadowblade is likely going to upset some people. I've already gotten some comments saying this is annoying and makes the game way too easy. I agree. It actually does make things very easy, and that's why I want to start with it, because it's absolutely mind-blowing the difference that it makes in terms of what you can do in combat. But the next thing I want to focus on is the Warlock and the Hexblade Warlock's big changes. So Hexblade Warlock, it obviously gets Shadowblade, but it also gets Booming Blade and the Staggering Smites, which I talked about here. So this is kind of another change. The Hexblade is possibly the strongest Gish build in the game. I prefer the Blade Singing Wizard a little bit more, but this gets medium armor proficiency if you're playing as a Hexblade Warlock. You get the Hexblade's curse, which you can apply on an enemy, and when you take them out, you can summon in a Spectre, which is going to allow you to tank a little bit, does a bit of necrotic damage. Getting a Booming Blade every single turn for that 2d8 plus the additional 3d8 thunder damage, a 5d8 of thunder damage if the target moves. And what's cool about this is there are some multi-classes you can do, like if you wanted to take like the Tempest Cleric and their pushback on thunder damage, then they have to move after they take that pushback. You can also shove them, or if you got a giant barbarian, they can kick them, and whenever they can move, they have to move again to get back to fighting you, so they're going to take that thunder damage from Booming Blade. So Booming Blade in itself, it could have dedicated a whole spot to this, kind of similar to what I did Shadowblade. Shadowblade is a massive change, but this is more so the Hexblade Warlock getting Booming Blade and Staggering Smite, two new spells to the game alongside the Shadowblade. This just makes the Hexblade Warlock very powerful in general because it can do a whole lot. It also gets the Banishing Smite here, so you can do a Banishing Smite with your melee attack. So that will do, as you can see, upwards of 90 damage. And that's not truly the number because it's a 48 plus 8, which is like 80 damage plus a 5d10. So you can get upwards of 130 damage, so that's 80 from psychic damage, and a 50 damage from force, and possibly banish the target if they have less than 50% health. So yeah, as you can see, 130 damage potential on a single melee attack is crazy. And the Hexblade Warlock is now, I would say, the most powerful caster melee combo in the game. That's coupled also, you can apply Hex to a target, although you can't do like a Smite because those will take up your concentration. But yeah, very powerful. The Hexblade completely changed the game. And on top of that, it's now the best single level dip in the game. If you're playing a Paladin, let's say you played the Oath of the Crown Paladin, go to level 11, get the improved Divine Smite adding a 1d8 of radiant damage on your attacks, you can take a single level of the Hexblade Warlock. This is going to give you Hexblade's Curse. It's going to give you Booming Blade. It's going to give you Eldritch Blast. And yeah, that combination is pretty deadly. You get the Bind Hex weapon, so you can apply this. And what's funny about the Bind Hex weapon is you continually bind it, and it makes the hit chance of the Hexblade's Curse even higher. I'm sure this will get probably fixed at some point, but if you continually binding your Hex weapon over and over, I think it's 26 times to get it to be 100% hit chance, you can guarantee to hit the Hexblade's Curse on an enemy. So that becomes crazy. So the Hexblade completely changed the game. So that's why I'm focusing on its second. I still think that this isn't in any order, but yeah, Hexblade and Shadowblade both are pretty crazy with what they give. Now, I guess a piece of gear that got changed, which I think makes a massive difference in the game, is the Gloves of the Battlemages power. Previously, this didn't work properly. So when you hit a target with a spell or a cantrip that uses a weapon, you gain Arcane Acuity. Now, this gives you 2 stacks of Arcane Acuity. What Arcane Acuity does is whenever you're attacking with a weapon, it's going to give you a +2 to your spell attack rolls and spell save DC. So to illustrate what I mean, my lovely assistant Astarion here is going to demonstrate. So Divine Smite can proc this, and what it's going to do, if you can hit him with it, it's going to give you the Arcane Acuity here. So with this, you get 2 stacks of Arcane Acuity, +1 to spell attack rolls and spell to save DC for every turn remaining. This can stack upwards of 10 stacks. There's previously been an item that's very popular early in the game with the Helmet of Arcane Acuity, kind of similar concept. Whenever you deal damage with a weapon attack, you gain Arcane Acuity. Now this is now doubled because whenever you do a attack with a spell or cantrip that uses a weapon, you gain Arcane Acuity. And you can also apply the Divine Smite reaction here, which will actually give you double stacks of the Arcane Acuity. Actually kind of crazy, so I'll demonstrate what that looks like here. Whenever you have Arcane Acuity, you get this cool glowing eye appearance, but yeah, we got 1 stack right now, and now we have 7 stacks. So turning on the reaction for it in here, it's crazy. You literally get 6 stacks of Arcane Acuity, so a +6 to your spell save DC is actually nuts. Because this is going to be the spell. I don't have this fully leveled up. It's only level 3 right now. We have a 19 spell save DC, 6 from Arcane Acuity. You can get upwards of 35 with this. This will likely take out Astarion, but yeah, you can see we got our max stacks of Arcane Acuity. This gives you a +10. Yeah, you're not missing your spells afterwards. This goes extra hard if you're using the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel, because then you can cast Command or Hold Person as a bonus action. And with a 35 spell save DC, I don't think anything in the game other than bosses are able to resist that. So these 2 items go hand in hand to make a very crazy class combination. So I had to make a complete section of this video for the Gloves of the Battlemages power, because that's so powerful for a variety of different builds, and it's going to benefit your wizards. It's going to benefit your Hexblade Warlock. Having a high spell save DC means you're going to land your crucial spells that you want to land, and also your damaging spells. So now that it's fixed, the spells it'll work on Booming Blade, it'll work on Divine Smite, but as I mentioned, Divine Smite actually gives you that double stacking of it. It works on Ensnaring Strike, and it also works on Hail of Thorns. And on top of all of that, Shadowblade also will trigger with its main weapon attack. So if you have a Shadowblade on, you do 2 attacks, that's 4 stacks right there. It becomes crazy. I will be experimenting to see, like, what if we do Divine Smite with Shadowblade, what we can possibly do. It actually is a very effective combination, so just had to have a section here for it. Now the Hexblade, or the Giant Barbarian, changes things completely. as you can now throw any weapon in the game. Previously, if you were to throw this gigantic sword, the Baldur Giant Slayer, it has a 2d6 plus your strength modifier twice for damage on a weapon attack. If you throw it, it does 1d4. Not great. Now you can actually throw it, because when we go into our Giant's Rage here with the Giant Barbarian, we can then apply the Elemental Cleaver. So what the Elemental Cleaver does is whenever we apply this, it's going to give any weapon the thrown property. So we got the Elemental Cleaver here, dealing additional 1d6 of cold damage and the thrown property. So applying this to your character, we can now throw any weapon in the game. It gets the thrown modifier down at the bottom, you can see. And what's kind of cool is this combined with this snowburst ring, you can make ice surfaces when you throw the weapon. One of my favorite features of the game. So grabbing the sword, you're going to go ahead here and throw this, and you can now actually deal damage with it. It normally would not do that much, but you can see there, we did damage, created a nice surface. It's strong. So what's nice about this, not only do you have the awesome ability to do that, but you can also go ahead and suplex a character. So you can throw anything with this build. So we're going to go ahead here and suplex Will into Jahara there. Hilarious animations. I think that this is so funny. Yeah, you can grab and throw anything in the game now without having to worry. Well, I guess you can't throw dragons or any creature that's larger than you, but with the Giant Barbarian, you can enlarge yourself to be able to throw any creature that is medium sized or smaller. And it's very powerful because, yeah, you can throw your weapon, you can throw a fit. You got a lot of stuff here on top of the damage that gets added to your weapon. So even with this, you can just go ahead and do a melee attack here and you'll get additional cold damage. I saved on the ice, thank goodness. So yeah, you'll just flat out be dealing more damage with your attacks here. It's very powerful with what it does, and it's a blast to play because you can like throw just throwing things in general is hilarious in Baldur's Gate 3, but doing a freaking suplex like that is hilarious. Being able to throw corpses to take out other enemies, it's a blast to play. I seriously can't get enough of this class. And there's a lot of other cool things you can do with it, but the Elemental Cleaver lets you throw any weapon, so no longer is Niralna the only option. You can choose anything. Niralna is still probably the best, I'll be honest with you guys, but being able to add additional damage to Niralna, like making these ice patches, makes it even crazier. So you got the Boot of the Giants, you got the Mighty Impel to suplex somebody, you got the Elemental Cleaver. The Giant Barbarian throwing whatever you please is just a blast to play. So yeah, this is a huge meta change because now you can really do whatever you want for a throwing build. And don't worry folks, I am using a True Resurrection to bring everyone back. Oh, and they didn't like that. Okay, now we finally resurrected everyone. Will doesn't want to be resurrected. Now the Shadow Magic Sorcerer makes it possible to do a full team of darkness without having to do an evil playthrough. Now, the only ways you can be able to see through magical darkness is by either playing as a Warlock and getting the Devil's Sight Invocation. There's a Ring of Eversight that allows you to see and prevents blindness. There's a Steel Watcher helmet, which prevents blindness. And there's Shar Spear of the Evening, which is only available to evil playthroughs if you kill the Night Song. Now we can do this without having to be evil. So on good playthroughs, you can do the Hexblade, use the ring, use the helmet, and the Sorcerer with the Eyes of the Dark here can now get the ability to see in darkness. The regular darkness spell doesn't work. Just a little heads up there. It's only the Eyes of the Darkness. So whenever we take this spell, basically what happens is we can see in darkness for 10 turns whenever we have this applied. It doesn't work in the regular darkness. It has to be the 2 sorcery point darkness spell. So this becomes huge because now you can literally just cast this, and this is probably going to aggro people in camp. Whenever we use the darkness, yeah, we are immune to blindness because we get ourselves the Eyes of the Dark. So you can see upwards a distance of 25 meters. So now you can do the full overpowered build of just having your entire team in darkness. This makes it pretty strong because using darkness is extremely effective for a variety of reasons, but you can even have people that don't see in darkness to camp out there for a little bit of safety because melee attacks and ranged weapon attacks can't work. The enemy's AI will actually do throwing attacks, and not everyone's really good at throwing. So yeah, this is, I think, a huge change to the meta because now you can have the full team without having to be evil, because typically you'd have the ring, there's the Steel Watcher helmet here, prevents blindness. And then on top of that, there's also my favorite weapon in the game, Shard Spear of the Evening, which the user cannot be blinded. It also gives you Shard's Darkness. This is still probably the best thing if you want to do a darkness build. But darkness is extremely effective, especially on honor mode. It can save your butt big time. You can have someone with darkness arrows shooting them around so you don't have a concentration on it. I would recommend like having an archer or a sword bard archer to create darkness with the arrows. And then you can have your team camping out in them with also the Eyes of the Dark there as well. So yeah, it becomes extremely powerful for a variety of reasons, but darkness is just a fun way to play. The Shadow Magic Sorcerer also gets the Darkness Dog, which also can see in darkness, and applies Omens, which allows you to regenerate your sorcery points, and it's just a fun class to play. At level 11, the Shadow Sorcerer also gets a teleport, so you can teleport to any lightly or heavily obscured area, darkness being heavily obscured, but there's a lot of shadows, like this pretty much entire area I'm in right now will actually count as darkness, so you can teleport using that. It also gives them distance spells, so you can increase the range of your spells. It becomes extremely powerful, and I think it's one of the coolest changes in this game. As someone that loves sorcerers, I was not sold on the Shadow Magic Sorcerer, but it actually is very, very powerful because of the reasons I mentioned there. So this makes whole team darkness a very effective option. Necrotic damage has previously been the worst damage type in the game. Now it's somewhat usable because of the Death Domain Cleric. So what's cool about this is you get the Reaper ability here, which you can target 2 creatures with your Necromancy cantrips. So with that, we got Bone Chill, we got Bursting Sinew, which is the new cantrip added in patch 8, which does an explodes a corpse doing piercing damage, and Toll the Dead, which if the enemy is damaged, it'll take a 1d12 of necrotic damage on a wisdom save. This is a higher hit chance than the dexterity save that Sacred Flame does, so not a bad option early game. But what's cool about this is you can actually, at level 6, ignore the resistance to necrotic damage with the Inescapable Destruction. On top of this, we also get the Channel Divinity Touch of Death, which adds additional necrotic damage on your melee attacks. What's cool about melee attacks is Inflict Wounds is a melee attack roll of a spell, so it does 3d10 necrotic, and you can get your additional necrotic damage off from that with your Channel Divinities, which replenish on short rest, so you want to use them quite frequently. It's also cool because you can combine this with like the Hexblade Warlock, and it becomes very powerful. We also get Spirit Guardians, which has a necrotic version, which can ignore resistances. We get the Vampiric Touch spell, and then, as I mentioned, once we hit level 6 here, the Inescapable Destruction, ignoring resistance to necrotic damage. So that's actually a huge buff, because once we start to cast our necrotic spells, they'll hit and hit quite hard. So things like Blight now become a little bit more useful, doing that 8d8 of necrotic damage that ignores our resistances. And you also get the Divine Strike necrotic here at level 8. This is a pretty cool multi-class combination you can do with this. So with this, if you were to go ahead and apply your Inflict Wounds on a target, it's going to do its regular damage. It can also be upcast, but then you can do the Touch of Death, as you can see here, which does a +5 necrotic plus a 2d12 necrotic whenever you hit with a melee attack. This does quite a bit of extra damage on a target. It's not game changing. I still personally think that using the Tempest Cleric is the most overpowered way to play a cleric. However, this does give options, and this is what the video is all about, changes to the meta. And previously, necrotic damage was the worst damage type because everything in their dog will resist necrotic damage, and now that's no longer because you can ignore those resistances. Anything that's immune to it is still going to be immune, so that's just something to keep in mind. But yeah, this makes it a lot different because you can use Bone Chill on 2 targets, which is pretty nice, so you can spread this out. Bone Chill's biggest effect is it prevents the target from receiving healing, so you can apply it to 2 enemies, they don't get healing for that turn. Your Vampiric Touch ignores resistances, so you can heal yourself a little bit. And then your Spirit Guardians will also ignore resistances too. So this makes necrotic damage absolutely a possibility in the game. Normally it wasn't, and especially since you get the Inescapable Destruction at level 6, so roughly the time that you're in Act 2. Perfect for those that love necrotic damage. Baldur's Gate 3 now has a real tank in the game with the Oath of the Crown Paladin, because previously you'd have the Battlemaster Fighter, which could do a goading attack, didn't always work properly. This now has the Champion's Challenge, which goads all the enemies into attacking only you. Any attacks made against other targets will have disadvantage. So this forces the AI to target the Paladin, and it hits in a huge area of effect, and it also uses the Channel Oath charge. You also get the Turn the Tide, which can heal, but I think the Champion's Challenge is even better. You also get the Spiritual Weapon, which can kind of tank for you as a bonus action using a level 2 spell slot. You can use the Mace or the Maul to be able to apply Dazed on a target so that things like Hold Person and Command can land a little bit easier, anything that has a Wisdom save. But also it'll draw attacks away from your teammates, so that also helps tank. The Paladin also gets the Hour of Protection like any Paladin does, which will give a bonus to saving throws, which is always a good thing. But in addition, we also get the Divine Allegiance. So when an ally within 1.5 meters of you takes damage, you can use a reaction to substitute your own health for your allies taking the damage instead of them. This is like pretty much the only real tank of Baldur's Gate 3, so I think that this is very interesting. And once you hit level 9, you get the Spirit Guardians, which is cool because this makes a really good Radiating Orb build, because then you can stack your Radiating Orbs with the Radiant damage, and you can also do Divine Smite for a bit of extra Radiant damage on top of that. And once you hit level 11, you get the improved Divine Smite. This is normal for any Paladin, but this can add Radiant damage to all your main weapon attacks, which is cool because at level 11, we can actually then add in the Hexblade Warlock, because then you get what's very effective is with this, you can then use charisma for your attack rolls. So if you had max charisma, you're going to have a higher hit chance. Hexblade's Curse, you can also get a shield spell for better defense. And then on top of that, you can do Booming Blade. And you can see there, it does Booming Blade plus radiant damage. So it's going to not only stack radiating orbs, but it'll also build up extra damage. So this is cool. You got an actual true tank. You can build completely around charisma. This would be perfect if you're looking for a new character to play as, because then you got your charisma attack roll, you got the defense, you got pretty much everything with this. For the Champions Challenge, you can see there, it compels everyone in this area to attack only your character. So the range on this is truly incredible. Just making for a very interesting tank style class. The Paladin itself is cool because it balances between spellcasting and not really true spellcasting, but it's a half caster with the Divine Smites. These will do a ton of radiant damage. So if you got radiating orb gear, you can make it so that enemies get like a -10 to their attack roll, so they don't hit you, and you compel them to attack you, making it very powerful. Also substituting in your health for your allies. And the Turn the Tide is also pretty effective as well, because it does a nice little heal there for everyone in the group. So the true tank in Baldur's Gate 3. The Swashbuckler, while not the most powerful class in the game, does have some benefits to it. So with the Swashbuckler, you get the fancy flip work. Whenever you do an attack against a target, it's not going to be able to hit you with a melee attack. So basically adding like a shocking grasp benefit to your melee attacks. And you also get the rakish audacity. So this gives you a bonus to your initiative rolls, and you no longer need advantage to trigger sneak attacks as long as you're within 1.5 meters of your target and don't have disadvantage. This makes for, the reason that I'm including here is it makes for a really powerful 4-level dip. This doesn't really, it doesn't get a whole lot more other than this. It gets a panache, which doesn't really do anything very effective. But you get yourself the dirty trick, Flick of the Wrist. So this does additional, basically your main weapon damage. You can flick your weapon at a target and possibly disarm them. What's nice about that is when you disarm a target, you can pick up their weapon, and then they're kind of just going to do melee armed attacks. So that is nice. It also gives you the dirty trick, Vicious Mockery. So bonus action, Vicious Mockery, to give a disadvantage on an attack roll, or the Sand Toss. So you got pocket sand throwing dirt in their eye. That's also kind of cool. So this makes for a good 4-level dip. Where this is effective is you can add in like the Gloomstalker Ranger, and you're not going to miss any feats, because with that 4 levels you get a feat, and then your next class will have 8 levels, which will give you another feat. So that's really effective. You must be using a finesse weapon to be able to do the Flick of the Wrist, but what it ends up doing is it'll disarm them, which is really nice as a bonus action, doing your main hand weapon damage. So you go ahead with that, knocking their weapon out of their hand, and then you go yoink, that's mine now, sorry Gale, you don't have a weapon. Which is really, really effective because, yeah, it also applies the Arcane Acuity, which is kind of funny. So yeah, Flick of the Wrist is pretty effective. It will remove the weapons out of the target's hands and just also stacks Arcane Acuity, which doesn't have a benefit here unless you're wanting to stack Ranger abilities. So yeah, this I think is cool because normally the weapon dips or the class dips are at level 1, 2, or 3, but actually having a level 4 dip is nice because now you can go ahead with disarming targets and still get full feats, so you can level up your dexterity and build around it. I think this works well with a Gloomstalker Ranger. So yeah, I just wanted to cover this one because it's all its benefits at level 4, and typically they don't. But then it'll also give you that sneak attack, so you can get that extra ability in. So while the Swashbuckler is not powerful, it does have some cool combinations that you can multi-class with. So I just want to cover it here as well. Now the Blade Singing Wizard is actually a really cool class because this makes the wizard more straightforward of a melee attacker spellcaster. Previously, and I still think that the Abjuration Wizard is the best build for the wizard, but this is a very straightforward one. For most people, I think they'd be better off with this. Now where it's effective is you get light armor proficiency, you also get proficiency with daggers, sickles, short swords, rapiers, scimitars, and long swords. Blade Song, gain a +2 bonus to your armor class and movement speed increases. You also get a +2 to constitution saving throws, so that you're more likely to hold your concentration on spells. Now with this, it has cool animations, but that's not the main purpose that I put it on this list for changing the meta. This is a spellcaster that has lots of options for spells, but on top of it can also hold its own in melee combat. So what you get is the special Blade Singing charges. At level 6 you get the extra attacks. When you're a Blade Song, you got multiple options. You can cast spells or you can melee attack, and this actually makes a very special item very viable, which I'll show you. It also gives you the Song of Defense, so whenever you get attacked, you can use 5 times the spell's level to subtract that amount of damage. So if you got hit with a spell, or you get hit with a damaging attack, you can use a level 4 spell slot to reduce the damage by 20. This gives you a bit of tankiness. You also get the shield spell, so lots of ways to increase your overall survivability with this. But I think the best part of the wizard is its spell list. No other class can pick Wall of Ice or Odaluk's Freezing Spear, which Wall of Ice actually got fixed to actually properly deal cold damage that it should have the whole time that it's been available. That could be a spell on its own on this list, but I'm not even going to list it as a game-changing meta. What's really big about this is the Duelist Prerogative. This is a rapier that previously it was good, but it just felt like it was missing something, because you can't have anything in your offhand while you use this, because it'll give you an additional reaction, and you also get a critical hit when rolling a 19. Now, what's cool about that is you get a free reaction. So if you have Counterspell on, you can now counterspell 2 spells. This makes it very defensive. It also has these cool animations, but it also has this cool animation. So you do a weapon attack, you kick your leg up like that, and I think that looks awesome. So what's great about this is whenever you have the Duelist Prerogative, it also gives you a bonus action attack that you can do. So the Duelist Enthusiasm attack. So you can do 2 attacks and a bonus action attack, giving you effectively 3 attacks and 2 counter spells and a +2 to your armor class, and you get spells. So you got lots of options there. You can hold a concentration on like hold monster. So you can go ahead, hold monster, go in, attack twice, and then attack a 3rd time. And likely by that point, you'll have taken them out. Also, when you're in the Blade Song, you get to increase your armor class. It says +4 there. I don't think that should be correct. But yeah, it gives you a +2 to your armor class when you have this. Oh yeah, it actually gives you a +4 to your armor class. It scales up as you level up. It was a little bit bugged in patch 8 stress test, but now it works properly. Increasing your movement speed, giving the +4 bonus to Constitution saving throws. That means with something like the Amulet of Greater Health, which gives you advantage on concentrations for your spells, you can now basically cast things and never break your concentration. This becomes very effective in a variety of reasons, but 2 counter spells, enough said. That's really good. So yeah, this is definitely one that I wanted to focus on because it's got a lot of effectiveness. And finally, we got ourselves the Arcane Archer, which is the True Archer subclass in the game. I still personally prefer the Sword Bard because you can use a Slashing Flourish to attack 4 times. You can attack the same target 4 times with that. Now, what's cool about the Arcane Archer is these arcane shots. This is massively buffed from Dungeons and Dragons, which only gives you the ability to do 2 of these for short rest. Now with the Arcane Arrows, you got the ability to do 10 of these once you hit level 10. So we got cool things like the Piercing Arrow, which you can shoot through targets. So this hits in a straight line, and you can hit a lot of targets with this. The Shadow Arrow, which can blind a target, dealing additional psychic damage. This is dependent on your intelligence, though, to be able to run the saving throw. So that's something to keep in mind. This does have a bit of intelligence required. You can use the helmet to be able to do that. So there's the Arcane Circlet. So you can use that. We also got like Seeking Arrows, which basically is a magic missile. It'll find the target it can't miss, and it can apply Fairy Fire to the target. And then also we got like Bursting Arrow, which hits in a large area effect, kind of like a fireball. Now what's massive of this is that additional 2d6 or 1d6 depending on the arrow type. That damage is pretty big whenever you consider how early in the game you get this. So at level 3, you can already do attacks that deal additional force damage that much. Pretty effective. So this is not crazy changing for the meta. It just lets you do something of a different flavor. As I know a lot of people complained, and I got comments previously the last year and a half about how there's no true archer archetype in the game. This actually kind of becomes an archer, as the name implies. So once you continue to level up, you do get the extra feats, which is nice. So you can take something like the Crossbow Expert, which will give you the ability to use crossbows at close range. So you could go full in on this with the Ballast Armor. It also has the abilities Magic Arrow, which considers them magic for overcoming resistance. And when you miss with a ranged attack, you can do a bonus action to make it attack the next closest target. Now, what's cool about all of that is it really does open things up to let you do some different combinations as far as the bow builds go. Now, the nice thing is the Seeking Arrow gives you a considerable increase to your range, because sometimes you're just like in a spot where you can't actually hit someone. So like you're right here. Oh no, what am I going to do? You can now hit targets around walls, because you can see there it curves around and hits the targets that you're trying to hit, which is really nice. So sometimes you're in a position where nothing can be done, and you can actually now go ahead and hit targets from downtown, which is crazy. So yeah, it has a great hit. It has a greater hit chance. You got a bunch of different types of arrows, and also the Piercing Arrows you can see here has a very large range. Like here we can hit all 4 targets. Crazy. So now this isn't the most effective class in the entire game. It's still quite strong though, so I wanted to put a focus on this because I've had a lot of comments in the past about archers not being that strong. Now we got a archer and a fighter at the end of the day is strong. 3 attacks, action surge, you got a lot. And it also, you give you guidance too, which is kind of cool if you don't have anyone else that has guidance. So with this, it just opens things up for new archers to flourish in Baldur's Gate 3. So yeah, those are the biggest changes to the meta, I believe, in Baldur's Gate 3's patch 8. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next video.